All right, welcome back. Let's now dig deep into what is playing out in the hallowed chambers of the Senate, which is part of the National Assembly, especially that has to do with some of the things that we call it a face-off between Senator Natasha Akpoti and Senate President Akpabio over issues that border on rules, that border on sexual harassment allegations and defamation allegations. So we're being joined by a public affairs analyst and a lawyer, senior partner at Justice Chambers, joining us from Uyo in Akwa State. Kemini Udim joins us. Mr. Udim, thank you so much for coming on the program. All right, let's, I think we've explored, I think I've seen the Senate spokesperson make maybe 2 to 3 television appearances in some of his remarks where he talked about the rules of the Senate, which since you're a lawyer, I'm sure you're familiar with how things play out within that space. The first part was the very point of action that happened last week when the people that were speaking to Senator Natasha said, no matter what it is you wanted to say, no matter how important it was, you needed to have followed the rule book. The order is you sit on where you're designated, which the Senate President has powers to allocate that seat according to their rule book. You speak from there, else you will not be pointed out, or sorry, identified to speak or called to speak on the floor. Yesterday was the issue of petition and the procedure to present a petition on the floor of the National Assembly. I want you to maybe help educate Nigerians on how this works and why these technical issues are important.
Well, thank you once again for having me. I have gone through the rules of the Nigerian Senate. It has a total of 236 orders, spreading through 15 chapters. And the provisions are clearly stated. And I know that before anybody takes the oath of office on the floor of the Nigerian Senate, the person is expected to have a copy of the rule book and then go through it. And I also trust that the Senate would, from time to time, organize seminar, organize internal meetings for them to discuss, the sections of the rules. You talked about the issue of Senator Natasha when it all started, where she was asked to leave a particular seat and go to another seat. That's not new in the Senate book. If you look at Order 11 of the rules of the Nigerian Senate, it says that a senator can only speak from the seat allotted to her. Another provision of the rule is Order 56, sub 5, which also says senators shall only speak from the places allotted to them. So it's clear that anybody who is in the Senate, any distinguished senator that attends the proceedings of a particular day, that person is expected to speak from the seat that has been allocated to you. And you know that when Senator Natasha started on the floor of the National Assembly, she did not sit on this particular seat that is now contested. So it's something that is already in the rule book of the Senate, and I'm very sure that distinguished Senator Natasha Akpoti is not surprised about that provision, because that provision has been there even before her arrival on the floor of the Senate. But I only think that there would have been a better way of handling what happened on that particular day on the floor of the Senate. But talking about having to speak from a seat different from the one that was allocated to you, that itself was against the rules of the Nigerian Senate.
You didn't speak to the second part that has to do with how petitions are presented. They are citing section Order 40, the subsections of that order, that she cannot sign her own petition. They really did not speak to the issue of the substance of that petition. It was about the procedure, which is why they knocked it out in the Ethics Committee, besides the fact that it's a subject under adjudication. I wanted you to explain that as well.
Well, if you look at Order 40, Rule 1 of the rules of the Senate, it says that a petition can only be presented by a senator. So that means you and I cannot present a petition on the floor of the Senate, because at this point, we are not senators. It's only senators that have the floor, that have the local standing to present petitions on the floor of the Senate. Now, when you look at 40 sub 4, it says no senator may present to the Senate a petition signed by himself and also by implication by herself in the case of a female senator. So that's so clear. And the petition that was submitted yesterday by Senator Natasha, we understand it was authored by distinguished Senator Natasha and signed by her. And that itself is against the provisions of Rule 40, sub 4 of the rules of the Nigerian Senate. I think the whole essence of this is senators are expected to take petitions from their constituents, take the petitions to the National Assembly, append their names as the persons that are presenting the petition, and then you do it dispassionately. The interpretation of that very rule of the Nigerian Senate would mean that it's about you taking up what is of public interest, what is of public importance to Nigeria, and not you taking up your personal matter. If you have to take up your personal matter, then you certainly need another senator to sign that for you and present it on your behalf. It's like in court, for us as lawyers, the rules of our profession does not allow us to go to the courts and then do our cases by ourselves, because you'll be swallowed up, with so much sentiment and emotion. And so it is expected, if I'm to take a case, to secure my interest, I get a lawyer in my office, or I get a lawyer in another office altogether to do it, and do it dispassionately for me. I appear in court as a litigant and not as a litigant and as a lawyer, because when you do this, there is a high possibility that you're going to mix it up a whole lot with the emotions and all that. And I think that is the principle behind the provision of the rules of the Senate, saying you allow another person to present this on your behalf. And so when Senator Natasha signed and was the person presenting, that itself was again against the rules of the same Senate, where she is a member.
That's as clear as it can get. About the matter under adjudication, which was also cited as a breach, in this particular instance, the one that has been initiated in court, that has to do with the sexual harassment case, has been initiated by a third party rather than the accuser or the accusee. So in this case, where the matter under adjudication that has been cited is by a third party, does it clearly breach the Senate rules for consideration?
Well, when you look at Order 53 sub 5 of the Senate rules, it states that the Senate will not deliberate on any matter that is pending before a court of law in Nigeria. And you have seen it over time that whenever someone raises a point of order on the floor of the Senate, that this matter that we're about to deliberate is already before Federal High Court or State High Court or even Magistrates Court, the Senate will stand down on the discussion on that matter, because it is in their rules that once a matter is in court, and it's also a way of respecting the authority of the court, because matter cannot be on two temples for discussion at the same time. It's before the court of law. It should not also be before the Senate. So you give it to the Senate that in their rules, once it is so, they stay away from it. Now, when we talk about the issue of Senator Akpabio's wife going to court to protect the rights of her husband, it's a different thing altogether. I mean, she can go to court, but whether there is a right of action for a third party in defamation matter is a different thing altogether. So since the matter is in court, I will not want to really comment on that. But the lawyers that have taken it to court should also sit back and then reconsider whether the law of defamation allows me to protect the interest of my father that has been defamed. It looks like, it appears very strongly, that law of defamation can only be taken personally by the person that has been defamed. But like I said, that matter is in court, so we leave it at that. So the matters that are in court cannot be discussed on the floor of the Senate. Now, what Senator Natasha Akpoti has taken to the court, I think it's about her privileges as a senator on the day of the first altercation that occurred in the Senate, talking about her privileges. I'm not sure that she has taken the issue of sexual harassment to the court. If she has also taken the issue of sexual harassment to the court, then it is improper for her to also take the same thing to the Senate for further deliberation. Now, there is another issue here that needs to be clearly determined. if the sexual harassment, which is still alleged at this point, if it happened somewhere in Uyo in Akwa Ibom State, as stated by Senator Natasha, can it be tabled on the floor of the Senate for deliberation, or should it be taken before the civil court, or maybe the ICPC for investigation? If it did not happen on the floor of the Senate, if it did not happen within the precinct of the Senate, I mean, this is something that Senator Natasha and her lawyers need to look into. If it did not happen within the precincts of the Senate, can it be investigated by the Senate? Because you have to distinguish between Godswill Akpabio as a senator and Godswill Akpabio as a Nigerian citizen. There are certain things that can be taken against Godswill Akpabio in the civil court and not in the Senate. And there are certain things that should be taken against Godswill Akpabio in the Senate because it happened on the floor of the Senate or within the precinct of the Senate. So this is something that the lawyers to distinguish Senator Natasha have to clearly sit back and discuss as to whether there is no clear distinction between what happened outside and what happened within the precinct of the Senate.
You said something which I'd like you to maybe speak to. You talked about emotions, and you said that some of the rules were put in place, so you separate emotions from the real issues. But you can't also discountenance the emotions, because emotions most times are as a result of, well, whether the allegations are true or not, but something that happened, right? So what should be done with all of that emotion in this case? Because from what you said now, it looks like a lot of things are being muddled together, and it will be tough to really get to the heart of these issues, either for the individuals or for us as a nation. So what is the appropriate thing to do, at least in your own opinion? Because all of that emotion now has spread across the country like wildfire, and we need to find a way to move forward.
Well, you cannot rule out emotions on matters like these because when you recall how it all started, Senator Natasha was not allowed to speak because she was not sitting on the seats allotted to her by the Senate. And recall that the Senate president also ordered the sergeants at arms after her. And recall how she erupted naturally, you know. Some persons have blamed her for erupting that way, but some persons will erupt even more. But at the same time, when you go to Rome, you behave like the Romans. Senator Natasha was holding the rule book in her hands and wanted to read something. One would have expected that she should have also seen clearly in that same rule book that, see, you just move. I listened to Senator Jus Okalu, I think 2 days ago, on Sheun's platform, Sheun's program. And he said he's been moved like 3 times in this present Senate. So it goes to the question, what's in a seat? If you are asked to move from one place to another, and then you move. For us as lawyers, if you go to sit at the front row of the bar, and a senior advocate walks in, automatically you are expected to leave that seat for the senior advocate. Even if the senior advocate is junior to you at the bar, you know, younger to you as regards age of call. But why do we move like that? It's because that's in our rule book. That's what the legal profession says you should do. So you move because the senior advocate is the prince of the bar. So he comes in, he takes his seat. It doesn't make the other lawyers any less, you know, legal practitioners. So now, emotions cannot be ruled out in this case. But this is what I want to say. The Senate is a big institution. It should be able to control what's going on within its precinct. And I expect very distinguished senators that are there, some of them former governors, some of them senators that have had so much experience, and even Senator Godswill Akpabio, a former governor of Akwa Ibom 2 times, and minister and all that with so much experience. I expect all of them to sit as a family and see how this can be settled. And possibly even withdraw the matters from the court and then take it back to the assembly, to the Senate.
All right, just before we let you go, just in 10 seconds if you can, because we're totally out of time, just casting our mind back. What if she didn't find anyone to help her present that petition? What options is left for her?
Well, there are 109 senators on the floor of the Senate, and Senator Natasha should at least have a friend. If not the female senators, one of the male senators to present her petition. That is if she really wants to present the petition to the Senate. But if that is not possible, if no one is ready to take it up for her, two options. It's either she goes to the court. I mean, one option, she goes to the court and then files a case against the Senate president. But note that when you take this kind of allegation to the court, and in fact, any allegation whatsoever, the burden of proof is on you. So you have to establish, and not just by words of mouth, because words of mouth can easily be countered. You need cogent and verifiable evidence to present to the court of law to be able to win a case of this nature against the Senate president. Anything outside that, if you just go to talk about, to give the narrative as was given on a sister television station, talking about the senator's house in Uyo and all that, the next question from the lawyer on the other side will be for you to present evidence. If you don't have any evidence whatsoever, then it's going to be a difficult hurdle, to cross. And I think that Senator Natasha, the husband, and every other person, they have been very close family members. So to say, I think this is something that they can sit back also as a family and then sort it out among themselves.
A very quick one again, before we let you go, Mr. Odim. Should the Senate President be presiding over this matter, be referring it to the Committee on Ethics, because the allegations have been leveled against him?
Well, if you look at the Senate rules, from the first order to the last, there is no provision that says that once a principal officer is accused of any infraction, that he should step down. However, this is a decision for the Senate to take as a family, to say, okay, Senate President, there is an allegation against you. Even though it is in the realm of allegation, we want you to step down for your deputy to continue. It's also for the Senate to say, well, since the decision on this is directed to a committee in the Senate, that means you are not going to be the judge over your matter. You are going to be invited to the committee. So there's no need for you to step down. It's also for Senator Godswill Akpabio. It's a personal decision for him to say, okay, I am stepping down. Or, no, I am not stepping down because I am not presiding over that matter, so to say. There is a committee presiding over that. Don't forget that when President Bill Clinton was accused by Monica Lewinsky in America, Bill Clinton was the president of America and he served through. He never stepped down. He rather went and then defended himself, against the allegation of Monica Lewinsky. And at the end of the day, when the allegation was found to be without proof, he maintained his position as president of the United States of America. An instance is about.
We're totally out of time.
It's like when you.
My apologies because of time. There are so many angles to look at these issues. From the legal to the procedural to the moral angle, we can explore this as long as it takes. But we're not done with the conversation, but we must thank you for your legal perspective. Ekemini Udim, public affairs analyst and senior partner at Justice Chambers, Uyo Akwa Ibom State. Thank you, sir.
Many thanks.
All right, we'll take just a short break and we'll be back to continue this conversation. Join us again.